Greetings to all of you. I am Maria de Lourdes Diez-Casal, Vice President of Hemispheric and Global Affairs at the University of Miami. Welcome to the second session of a three-part series of webinars that we, the members of the Hemispheric University Consortium, are convening to share our experiences and brainstorm next steps on the delivery of educational outcomes in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. The genesis of this series came through two collective realizations. First, we have all had to significantly change the way we deliver education and how our students learn. And it doesn't look that we're going back to the way we were before. Second, as we have adapted and we continue to adapt, each of our institutions is learning and generating a significant amount of knowledge on how we can successfully transition to this new reality, incredibly important knowledge worth sharing and further developing. So the series is being delivered in three parts. At the first session last week, we experienced and we shared the experience of how we went through the abrupt change to go from face-to-face to some kind of distant or online delivery to our students. Today, we will explore the current situation in educational delivery. So how are we doing? What is the process? How are the students feeling? What are the challenges that are emerging as we are undertaking this new way to deliver our education? And a final session next week is going to talk about the future. How are we going to go back to the new normal or to the new normality of the things we were supposed to be doing? So before we start, and I'll introduce our panelists today, I want to briefly say what happened last time. From our expert panelists at the first session, we learned a few things, very important things that I want to briefly mention. One is that a successful approach should be one that is student-centered active learning. The importance to ensure that the technology is right, and also to understand that no one way or one rule fits all. We also learned that the initial challenge was to guide our faculty throughout the process. But once the tools were created, our faculty became for education the equivalent to medical doctors in health. They became the heroes of the change, motivated by the great vocation that they have. On the student side, the increased level of stress that our students were facing was agreed by our panelists, and the need to support them academically and psychologically, and also to offer them counseling as well as complementary cultural programs, music, singing, painting, etc. It was also discussed that through history, we have been in similar emergency situations, but none at the speed that we have experienced the COVID-19. And although we are moving in uncharted waters, we have the opportunity and the space to enhance core education values, focusing on human capital. For our conversation today, this is the procedure. Each of our panelists is going to provide an initial conversation about their university's experiences. And then we're going to have a session of question and answer. And I want to urge you all to use the question and answer feature at the bottom of your screen so that you can send us your questions for the panelists. And with that, let me introduce our panelists today. Dr. Luz Longworth, she is the Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal at the University of the West Indies Open Campus. She has had ample experience in distant and online learning implementation even before this current crisis. Dr. Joaquín Guerra Achem, he is the Vicerrector Académico and of Innovation Education at the Tecnológico de Monterrey. He has been in charge of the transformation of traditional learning to distant and online modalities within the model Tech 21 of Monterrey Tech. Dr. Steve Gennaro, lecturer, Department of Humanities at York University, an early adopter of e-learning in higher education, has designed and delivered courses in traditional blended and online formats since 2005. So with that said, I'm gonna ask Dr. Luz Longworth to start with her presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning to all. I will just like to thank first the organizers of the webinar for inviting the University of the West Indies to present our experiences during this very difficult time of COVID. As I have put it in my slide, that we are living in a COVIDified teaching and learning environment. And that environment has changed everything that we've done. I have a few minutes, but I will ask you to indulge me just to give you a little bit of context, particularly for those who may not have been at last week's seminar on the UWI, how we responded, and then to speak about our approaches to the various challenges that our chair has pointed out. So just a little bit of geography. The University of the West Indies covers 17 countries, from the Western Caribbean in Belize to the Southern Caribbean in Trinidad and Tobago, up north to Bermuda and the Bahamas. 17 countries, 5 campuses for our physical campuses. And the open campus, which I lead, is a virtual campus, but has sites in 16 of those 17 countries. So you can imagine the challenges that we've had in responding to this with 16 different governments and national policies. But we did do a regional response, and we formed a task force which pulled together all the elements of our expertise, our medicine and science, to attack the COVID virus as it was attacking us. And the UWI Open Campus, having been the university's what I call secret weapon since 2008, and having developed since 2008 quite an expertise in online and e-learning, combined with our colleagues in our various campuses who have expertise in that area, in our centers for excellence in teaching and learning, we worked together to pull off what I know for most universities was a miracle in training a majority of our faculty to transition within, in some cases, a week, in some other cases, 2 weeks into the online teaching and learning environment. And not only that, we also did quite a bit of support, having the faculty, the staff in place to transition the students, the training of the staff, but also in reaching out to our region in training teachers in the teachers' colleges, because all of our primary and secondary schools were also going online and teachers had very little skills. We worked with our governments and we worked with NGOs, and we also worked on developing innovative methods. I'll speak a little bit more about those as I speak to our plans. So we start here to say, so now we are online, and I would say not so fast. No, not necessarily. What we have done is we have done an emergency response, an emergency remote teaching response. So it's like giving emergency CPR to a patient who has collapsed on the road. But then you are in the hospital and you now need to move to rehabilitation to make sure that that person is well. So we have been able to use this time of moving over 80% of our teaching staff online and about 50,000 students online to test what the system is, because for many of us, we know that there has been quite a lot of reluctance to in some areas to move to online teaching, and there is always the discussion as to the benefits and the disadvantages of moving more online. So what we have done, and I've used the acronym TEST, is to test the system with this new paradigm that we have entered. And as our chair quite rightly pointed out, these have shown us areas that we need to address, and I will share with you how we have been addressing them for both short and long-term benefit. And the first area is training, the second is equity issues, the third is student success, and the fourth is technology. So that spells out test. In the area of training, our experience has been that more than 70% of our teaching faculty across the region had very limited experience in online teaching. With the open campus, we teach completely online, and we have 7,000 students studying totally online, but our sister campuses are primarily face-to-face. And what we found is that those persons who had participated in any form of training of online delivery or development were able to move quite seamlessly. So there were persons who had done our certificate in university teaching and learning, which is a requirement for most faculty. Some don't do it, but most do it. We're also able to adapt, and those who participated in the emergency 2-week training program were also easily adaptable. And we've had in our surveys of our staff, a very good response from them in terms of how they are coping, despite it being an unusual environment for them. But there was a great deal of anxiety initially. In the area of technical support, we must never underestimate the need for technical support for both the faculty and the students. And we have often thought that, well, our technicians have the training, but not necessarily to support online learning. So technical support is a key element that we have learned coming out of this experience is necessary. And let us not forget our students. Our students also need to be trained on how to navigate an online environment. And those are some of the teachings, the learnings that we have gotten out of this period. The other issue, which for us in the Caribbean has really raised red flags, is the issue of equity. And in our surveys, we have found that approximately 25% of our students across the region indicated difficulties with not having an appropriate device to access the online teaching, as well as not having access to stable internet. And that has been a major challenge for many of the students, 25% approximately, based on our preliminary research. What we have done in trying to mitigate that is to partner with our donors, to partner with our internet service providers, who have been very forthcoming in donating devices such as tablets or mobile phones, but also recognizing that our terrain sometimes prohibited stable internet, but mobile data was a possibility. So we have spoken to many of the internet service providers who have provided special packages or zero rating for students who are accessing the University of the West Indies teaching and learning platforms. So that is one area that we very quickly had to work with when it came to the issue of equity. So collaboration with our funders, collaboration with our suppliers has helped us to navigate, and this will be an important platform for the future. Student success, we spoke about that, and we spoke about the support for students, the psychosocial support. Even for our students who were already used to studying online, our 7,000 in the open campus, their major problem was the environmental stress. And many of them were considering dropping out, but we provided very quickly online psychosocial support, online counseling, online advisors, and they have reported to us that that has helped them. So in this environment, that was very important in retention of students to the point of assessment. Another important concern for students was the assessment. Will we be able to do these assessments? Will we fail if we are doing assessments the normal way? We found that in our environment, we could not do online assessments with any online examinations with any security because of unstable internet. So we have actually now revolutionized some of our own concepts of how one assesses students. And this is also to ensure that the students can have success in completing their year. Finally, is technology. And I say finally because most people think it's all about the technology. It is not. The technology is available, but the choices that we make in the technology, that is the key element. We have, luckily in the university, we had policies that limited how many platforms we could use. And so it was easy for us all to transition, but we have found in other institutions where there is fairly liberal freedom of faculty to choose their platforms, and that can result in equitable delivery across courses. So it is very important that we choose platforms that are compatible, that can integrate, and that are also going to be for the students' best interest. So those were the major challenges we had, and we can speak about them more because I know I'm running out of time. But I just wanted to share finally that this is such an important forum for us to come together, even though we are apart, for collaboration across our hemisphere. In the Open Campus, we have made it our business to develop as many programs as we can to teach how to teach and learn with emerging technologies. I've shared a couple on the screen. So we really do welcome this conversation, and I look forward to your questions. So thank you very much on behalf of the University of the West Indies and on behalf of my Open Campus. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Luz. I give the word to Joaquín Guerra, please, from TEC de Monterrey.
Thank you, Lourdes. Let me start sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody. Thank you for the Hemispheric University Consortium. Thank you, Lourdes, Benjamin, all people that have been made this possible. Well, briefly, I want to tell you some of the issues that we have currently facing. We are calling at my university, TEC de Monterrey, this process academic continuity 2.0, whereas the 1.0 version was the beginning stage, the first 2-3 weeks. So just to give you context briefly from the last time that I talked, our challenge, as you know, we had to have 90,000 students, 10,000 faculty, and 55 sessions per week, 55,000 sessions per week, all enabled in a week to get working and moving on these distant learning experiences. So that was the context where we began and where we have been working and improving from that point. Challenges, current challenges. As you well know, we have laboratories and we have special courses that have special needs, which make it a bigger challenge to make it distant. So we had to make interventions, and this I want to recognize our faculty and our online distant education teams, because they have been working, technology education teams, they have been working in developing simulators, softwares, virtual labs, remote labs. So just to give you an idea, about 221 courses with over 50,000 students groups, 85% of them have been resolved. 15% we still have partially resolved them. We still have to go, but again, we are being able to ensure that our students keep having the learning experiences in labs and special courses. Now, the other challenge, the other important issue is the health mind issue. And just to give you an idea, we ask students, we are constantly surveying students, and prevailing emotions in students are stress and tired. Faculty, fortunately, yes, there's stress also, but up to now, it prevails that they are engaged and that they are thankful. And this is very important, because if you have the faculty engaged, they will go to the end of the world to make it happen. Parents feel right now peaceful, optimistic, thankful. Again, there's a stress, but I just want to share you what's going on in terms of these emotions that are very important. We have been doing many awareness campaigns, and these are the numbers. We have a line, phone line, 24 hours to attend all these issues. We have over 12,000 contacts for assessment. We have resources where we have people accessing these resources for helping them in their mind health. Again, what I want to stress here is that we are taking care of this issue because we feel it's very, very important. Some promising data, I mean, there is a lot of information, but I want to stress on this one because this is a comparison we did on a survey where we asked the students. My professor challenged me to give my best. And for the first week, pre-COVID, the average grade on this was 9.04 out of 10. And after 5 weeks of COVID, post-COVID, it's 9.07. So far we feel in this area confident that students keep feeling challenged and the faculty are doing their work. Of course, there are a lot of issues to be taken care of. There are students that are not feeling happy, that they want to go back to full presence. We understand that, but it's just to give you some idea that, some things work and students so far, they feel they are still giving their best and faculty are helping to give them to help them to give their best. I'm sorry that I couldn't translate this to English, but just what I want to stress on this slide is the evolution. We started we started late March, remote teaching. Then we're moving all the way to what we are considering online learning, so that eventually in August we will be blended learning. And again, this takes several phases. First phase, redesigning and helping faculty to accompany faculty to make the change. But then the biggest issue is training so that we can develop our faculty's digital competencies so that they can be ready for that area. And of course, we have several milestones that we are moving all the way to a full certification of our faculty. I want to stress also the community social impact initiatives. The social aspect is very important, and we are involved with many, many areas, hospitals, faculty, other universities, churches, to help, share our resources so that we can move along in this part. Some examples of what's going on: open learning resources, research for treatment in COVID, etc. And last, I just want to stress some of the challenges and insights. Again, faculty training, tutoring, follow-up, they are our heroes. They are our soldiers. They are the guys that are making it happen, our faculty. So we have to be with them. We have to support them, and I'm very thankful to them. Yes, there is stress. Yes, there is anxiety. So we have to have a full resource support resources for students and faculty. We need to take care of that. Labs, redesign, and adaptation, very important issue. Students need social contact. So again, we are working fully on developing other courses that are also remote, that are not academic: dance, drama, yoga, mindfulness, music, arts. I mean, students are going to these courses, and even we're inviting parents, and other members of our community, staff, so that they are also taking all of this. Evaluation, assessment is a very huge issue, and we need to take care of it. Faculty learning, but the good thing is that faculty are learning new technologies and pedagogies that they are going, they will enhance their practice. And when we go back to this new normal, we are going to have better faculty, better enabled, and doing, I'm sure, super jobs in student learning experiences. And of course, online learning has been important, but we need to keep looking and understanding and experimenting with new models that will enhance the future experiences, learning experiences. Hybrid models, the use of virtual learning, 360 video, synchronous, asynchronous sections, active learning, etc. So with this, I will end, and of course, great to be able to discuss this later on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Joaquin. Now I give the word to Steve Gennaro from York University.
Thank you very much. First, I'd just like to say that I know that York University is very proud to be a part of the Hemispheric University Consortium, and we're grateful to be able to be a part of the sharing that is going on and the collaboration moving forward. And I'm excited to be here to share on behalf of my university some of the practices that we've been involved with over the last several weeks as we transition our way through these times and these challenges. Now, in my work, I'm one of the frontline workers. And so I'm down there in the trenches with the students themselves. And the university has done an excellent job in seeking out their resources, including drawing on some of their faculty like myself, who have been teaching online for almost 2 decades now, and asking us to share some of our experiences with other faculty to help them with the transition and to help to, we want to remove friction points as we try to transition to online teaching and learning. We want to take away the spaces where there can be challenges or difficulties for students. And there's an anxiety around moving to online teaching and learning, partly because I think we're a little bit afraid to fail. But what I want to let you know is online teaching always fails. That's sort of part of the process of teaching online. And when the failure comes, how will we deal with it? So I say it's about a process of reimagining your digital pedagogy as we move online. When I was a young boy growing up, Michael Jordan was my favorite basketball player. A great athlete, a phenomenal basketball player. And I had this poster in my bedroom. And what it talked about Michael Jordan, it wasn't about all the things that he did so well in winning. Of course, he was one of the greatest winners in American professional sport or North American professional sport. But it was how he highlighted how his failure is what allowed him to succeed. It was the fact that he failed, but in missing the game-winning shot, in losing those important games, that's where he found his real successes. And I think we can just take it out of athletics and we can bring it back to teaching and learning. What we realize is that teaching and learning is fundamentally actually about failure. That's actually the scientific method. We try things out and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And it's through the trial and the error that we learn and we grow. Thomas Edison, I love this quote, he said, it's not that he created the light bulb, it said he found 10,000 ways not to create the light bulb first along the way. And so what I encourage teachers to do, and those that I'm working with, is to find their light bulbs as we fail 10,000 times in our transitions, because the failure will be there. And so for me, one of the big problems that I encountered early on, and this is a screenshot of Moodle, which is the learning platform that we work with at York University, is I had all of these wonderful activities. But what I couldn't find was a real-time feedback option. A feedback option online as I was failing, how could I tell what was going on in the exact moment? You see, because if I was in the classroom, and this classroom picture is myself there teaching with my students, posted with permission from my students, is that when we're in the classroom live with our students, there are so many other notifications to us that let us know when we're succeeding and when we're failing, and when more explanation is required or more engagement is required. But trying to replicate that in the online environment was very challenging because there is not the same feedback loop. So we need this feedback loop in our regular engagement of human activity. And even when we Zoom, like we're doing right now, which is fun and exciting and allows great opportunities for us in digital teaching and learning, that's wonderful, but it's not the same as when we are in the classroom. So how could we solve that or fix that? So this was my challenge, and I thought about it. As I first came to online teaching and learning many years ago, I thought that maybe I could just do the same thing. Well, what I did in the traditional classroom, I could just do virtually and it would be okay. And then it wasn't. And then I thought maybe my job as a teacher or as an instructor would be the same. The way it was in the classroom, but it wasn't. I have to wear more hats. I have to be tech support. I have to be available. And then I thought, well, maybe students will learn the same way. And what I realized is that they don't. And I'd hoped that maybe I could just take some of the things that I did and cut them and paste them from one slide and drop into the other, and it would work. And I found that it didn't. So what I did is I tried to recreate the lecture hall. That's where most of my success was in my early years of teaching and learning, is in the lecture hall. I had success. Students liked my lectures. I received great responses back. Dr. Gennaro lectures are engaging. And so I thought, well, why don't I just do what I do best? And so I tried with written copies of my lectures in 2006, but that didn't work, or PowerPoint 2007, PowerPoint with audio 2009. Then I went to Prezi in 2011. I tried Camtasia video lectures in 2012. And what I realized is on all of those cases, I was failing. That's not to say these technologies are failures. It's to say my use of these technologies were unsuccessful. Because what I learned early on is that relationships facilitate learning. And we have to build relationships in the digital environment if we want to create learning environments that are successful. So success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm, is what Churchill once said. And I think that there's a great lesson to be learned there. And the lesson is simply this: find your light bulbs. Start, and then begin exactly where you are. Start small, scaffold your way to best practice and build as you go. And it's okay to fail along the way. And here are real quickly 4 of my light bulbs that I have built on throughout the years that have allowed me to adapt and adjust my digital pedagogy as I go to where I am now in 2020, where I'm doing gamification with my students. But I didn't start there. I started where I was. And each way along the way, I improved my digital pedagogy and by building relationships with my students. Find your light bulb. Where is that? Start there, and that's okay. I began with, instead of long lectures, I started with small podcasts. So I broke up my lecture into sort of 10-minute podcasts using a free software like Audacity that I downloaded off the internet and just started speaking into my computer. And before I knew it, I had these podcasts my students could listen to while they walked or jogged or exercised or commuted or whatever it was. And that was that I found to be a little bit of success there. And then what I started doing was having a YouTube newsletter. And so this is me in my kitchen. It was very real. It was just recorded with my cell phone, where I just used my cell phone to take a video of me saying, "Hi, everyone. It's Monday. How are you feeling today? How are things going in your life? Here's where I am, and here's where we are in the course. We're going to do these couple things this week online. I'll see you next Monday. If you have any questions, reach out to me." And all of a sudden, I built this great online community with my students. But it got even better, because in 2017, then they started making videos that they were sending back to me. And this was where really things began to explode as we started just again scaffolding and building. And what you'll see is I showed them how to do it and how to upload it. And then what happened is we would have a question of the week, and then they would send me back their YouTube responses. And we started building, this is an asynchronous course, we started actually building a community of sharing together. And now where I'm working on this summer with my students right now is we're playing games. We're doing gamification, and the students are just deeply engaged in being part of this community. So it's about reaching out to where they are, but also recognizing where you are, starting where you are, and that's okay. Don't be afraid to fail, right? Failure is not the end, it's the beginning of the process. Trust whatever limited feedback you have and seek out more from your students themselves and from your colleagues. There's no catch-all solution, as I already mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, for any teacher, any course, any delivery format. The technology is always changing, so we'll change with it. Change with your students, it's okay. And you know what? Be yourself, because that is always the best resource, right? Isn't it, doesn't they say in the importance of being earnest? Isn't that what Oscar Wilde says? Be yourself, everybody else is already taken. And so off you go. If you have any feedback, please feel free to send it to me. But I appreciate being included in this, and I look forward to sharing more in the question and answer period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. So now we are going to start the question and answer period. We have a few questions from the audience. I'm very happy, so please bring some more. And I have the first question here for Luz from UWI, the University of the West Indies. Will you explain that you are geographically spread? So do you expect that after the pandemic is over, you are going to have more online teaching than you had before the pandemic? And the second question that comes from the audience is, how do you do student assessment in the new model?
Yes, thank you. I think it was Joaquin that spoke about moving to a hybrid approach, but we are all not certain what the next academic year is going to look like. So, but I can say certainly we will be doing more online teaching than we were before the pandemic. Our geography is such that many of our students have to travel to a physical campus. And in this environment, we expect that there will be more reluctance to do that until there is a vaccine or there are clear ways of ensuring that the pandemic does not spike again. So yes, there will be more online teaching, certainly in the next year or two. And we see that as a pattern in several universities across the world. I think the University of Cambridge just in the UK just announced that they won't be teaching face-to-face until 2021, academic year 2021. So it is quite real. What I do expect though is to see smaller classrooms, physical classrooms, when we can get back there with more online teaching, so more hybrid. And the second question was what assessments, what new format of assessments. What we found in looking at things like proctoring tools was that they were not foolproof, one, to use a term, but also it was difficult in an environment where we couldn't guarantee that students would have stable access to the internet. So we did a couple of things in terms of assessments. We have reimagined our assessments, to use Steve's term, and we have done quite a lot more of formative assessments. So open book type of assignments, timed assessments that they can upload and send in. The key thing though is that what we've done is to give the students an extended time frame in order to upload their assessment, given the uncertainty of internet access. So they would have a period in a day to upload that assessment, which would allow for any glitches with the internet. We also, in the Open Campus, we have an app where the student can upload the assessment even without internet access, and it is date stamped, and as soon as their device is connected, it is sent into our portal so that they won't miss the deadline even if there is a problem with their internet access. But across the region, we have some challenges, for instance, in those courses that are practicums and how to redesign a practical experience. And I was very interested in what Joaquin was saying in terms of labs and simulations. That's the next big frontier that we need to address in terms of assessment. Thank you, Lourdes.
Thank you very much, Luz. Now I have a few questions for Joaquin. You mentioned several challenges that you are having at the end, and I think one of them has been caught by our audience, which is precisely what Luz just said, the challenge about how to put into distance learning or online learning these courses that have some experiential aspect to it, some laboratory aspect, and somebody says there with some student involvement, directly. So they want to know, how are you doing? Can you give an example? And then, Joaquin, there's another question related to that says, clinical teaching in hospital setting and the assessment in faculty of the medical sciences is a problem. Do you have any suggestions?
Definitely. I mean, I would say that in terms of the academic things that we are adapting, the lab and special courses are the most challenging. What we did was to commission a group of leaders from engineering, medical school, the groups that have a heavy use of laboratory, to first of all get together with faculty leaders and find the ways that they could do some adaptations. I mean, we all acknowledge it's not going to be the same experience. We will never be able to put the same physically present experience, but okay, what's next to it? And Steve mentioned about imagining and trying and failing and thinking what is the next step. That's what we have to be. That's what we have been doing. So, and one issue has to do with flexibility. Okay, let's understand, how can we be more flexible? How can we adapt this learning in the lab with simulation tools that there? I mean, there exist very good simulation tools. How can we do demonstrative videos you know, faculty doing a video demonstrating the use of a lab equipment, you know, things that could help students show the way. Virtual reality, you know, can we show a surgery room or a lab practice in a virtual environment so that the student can get a fuller experience, not the present one, but an almost real one. And again, you know, making adaptations and then letting students know, hey, listen, we're going to do all of this. However, you know, at the time that we can go back to in presence, you know, going back to labs, we will continue and resume. Don't worry about your grade, because again, students are worried, oh, my grade, what's going to happen? Okay, don't worry. We are going to keep moving forward. At the end, there will be an assessment about your work, and whatever we couldn't do, when we come back to it, there will be time for that. Of course, we are very worried about research, you know, and how that we enable our researchers. That's another issue that we're working with our researchers so that we can handle it. And to end the answer specific to the medical school, yes, there's big challenges. I'm very proud of our medical teaching staff for what they've been doing. I would, you know, very gladly share information on our leaders at the faculty, the medical school, so they can tell you real life examples of what they are doing. Time will not permit me now, but, you know, glad to share with that with our audience.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. Now I have a question for Steve from York. You presented something very interesting that aroused some question about these methods that you yourself are using. And some of the questions are, what are the most useful tools that you suggest that the faculty should explore to achieve this find your light bulb that you were talking about? And what are the types of weekly questions that you pose to your students? And finally, what do you recommend for the faculty of the humanities to do in the cases of some courses that really need a face-to-face dealing with the students? So all have to do with the same issue, Steve.
Yeah, well, those are all great questions. I think that the activities that work best are going to be different for every instructor. I think the focal point should be on, again, starting with where are your strengths as an instructor. So what is it that you do best, and start there. Because if that's your strengths and your talents, begin with your strengths. Always start with your strengths. And so I would say that is the first place I would look. But then I would look to if I had a list of things that I did well, if I sat down and said, what do I do well? And I made a list, I would ask myself, does this strength help me to build community? Because what we need to do is build relationships with our students. The anxiety that they are feeling, the isolation that they are feeling when we teach online through distance, the more human you can be. And sometimes that requires a little bit of vulnerability. And I know that we're not often fans of being vulnerable or presenting ourselves in vulnerable positions, but the more human you can be to your students, the more opportunity there is to build those connections. And again, relationships really facilitate learning. So I would say, look at your strengths and start there, and then ask yourself, can I help facilitate building community? For some, that will be posting video. For some, that will be posting audio. For some, that will be weekly check-ins by writing. For some, that may be, maybe you take one larger assignment. Let's say you have a very large exam that's worth 50% in your course. Maybe you break that down into 4 smaller assignments because you recognize that the challenges need to be looked at differently in the online learning environment. I like personally working with regular forms of assessment. So ongoing assessment that's regular. I like to ask my students to reflect on their own lives as it connects to the knowledge that we're working through. So whether that be through a written journal, or whether that be through a video YouTube journal, or some type of ongoing reflective piece that they're allowed to continually come back to and build on, and then take at the end some type of collaborative project that asks to gather what they've learned throughout the whole process and put it it together. So again, we're really interested in facilitating knowledge in the online learning environment rather than dispensing knowledge. It kind of changes a little bit our rule. So those would be some of my suggestions. And as to the questions that I ask, in that first weekly check-in that comes out usually Monday morning, I don't really ask questions other than how are you feeling and how are you doing? And do you have any big plans for this week? And how was your weekend? And then what I might do is send another video the next day that is sort of more topic specific that will say, okay, on the weekend or over the last week, we did these 3 readings. Here's a big theme. Can you think about that theme and how it connects to your own life? Or right now with COVID, there are so many places to go for inquiry and to continue to look at. So I would always ask them to try and make connections and unpack, connect back to the course, connect to other courses they've taken, connect to their life experience. There's so much knowledge out there. And we know that when we make connections, that's when the learning really happens. So ask your students to make connections, ask open-ended questions, and let them be the experts based on the knowledge that you're giving them access to.
Thank you very much, Steve. Now I have a question really for all of you. So I would like a brief answer from each of you if you have this experience. There's a lot of congratulations to you all, by the way, okay, about your presentations and the good insights that you're giving to the audience here. They say in the traditional campus experience, students learn from each other, both in the classroom and outside, formally and informally. How do you think we can facilitate this kind of peer learning and relationship building? And how can we help them to also interact with the community and bring that experience to the classroom experience? Anyone, you want to raise your hand who wants to answer first? Okay, Luz?
I guess we can go in the order that you had us first. We have grappled with that for a long time with the Open Campus, as we already have students who are in 17 different countries. And we've dealt with it in several ways. The first way, of course, is looking at your curriculum development to ensure that you build in activities where students work together in small groups. And in fact, you leave them to organize how they do that, whether they do that by WhatsApp or they do it by Zoom, but their own methodology of collaborating and then coming back into the main group and presenting the work that they do. So group work is enhanced in using the technology in that way. Another thing that we've done is that we have actually created a hangout spot for students in our learning exchange, where it's their spot. So they hang out with each other, they hang out with their student leaders. It's not a curated area. It's a free area for them to speak to each other. So that is an innovation that we have done. But we do understand the need sometimes for a little bit of touch. The model that we used in the Open Campus does have physical nodes in each of our countries, which allow for students to come together in small groups for study as well as for entertainment. And believe it or not, we have online sports, we have online games, we have online debates, and our student guild will tell you they do not feel as if they're not building a community online.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Luz. Joaquin?
Yes, well, as Luz mentioned it, and I might add some ideas. I mean, again, it's about innovation and it's about daring to do it. First of all, we have a very strong group of tutors who we have commissioned to make sure that they have online communities through Teams or through other tools that we have provided them, so that they have during the regular week meetings, general discussions, cafe meetings. They're even having a Netflix meeting, where they get with their students and watch a movie, share ideas, general discussions. Again, we are not going to be able to have the same present experience, but we want to make sure our students are constantly having that human touch through the use of technology. So getting their feelings, their emotions, following them up. If they find out that some students having an issue, call him, call parents. You know, again, we are doing an extra effort to be near them. And also the courses that, as Luz mentioned, you know, we have provided other courses where students are, you know, sharing things, you know. I mean, the music students are doing together music shows, you know, they are sharing whatever they're doing. Again, the mindfulness, you know, yoga courses, you know, are the most used ones, you know, aside from the academics, you know. Again, get them involved in other issues to get to talk, to share, to have this almost not like experience with touching or contacting and relating with other people.
Steve?
Yes, so I can only speak to what I've done that is I've had some success with in terms of building community. So in two types of courses that I teach, I can give you real quick one example, and that is I try to build into the assessment the need to work together in a way that is mutually beneficial. So often students don't like group work because they feel that sometimes if they get in the wrong group, someone can affect their grade and it can bring them down. And there's all of these things about it. But if we instead of think about it as teamwork, where we all set out for a common goal and we all benefit from mutual cooperation and we build that into the assessment, then there's the opportunity to really make it successful. So in my synchronous courses, the one that goes live where I lecture, or I'm in a lecture room, you know, 6 hours a week with my students, we have small breakout rooms where they break out and they do independent or group activities together, and then they come back and present those activities. And that course, as a gamification course, means that there are points awarded to the teams for the work that they do, all right, as a team. So each individual isn't responsible, but collectively when they work together, there are points that are awarded. In my asynchronous course, the one that is not live, so that way it doesn't happen in a live fashion, my students, they create these YouTube journals where they respond to the questions. And in responding to the question, sorry about that, and in responding to the questions, they post them into smaller chat rooms. So now I have the classes divided up into groups of 5. And then each student is responsible for providing feedback to the members of their group based on their responses to the questions. And then within the group, each week they select one of those YouTube journal responses, and that one person gets to redo their video based on their feedback from the group and then resubmit it. And then the whole group gets a grade that's shared based on the individual resubmitted. So what we have here is a bunch of stages working together. We have people sharing together asynchronously, but by video. So it's still a little bit of face-to-face where they see each other. They provide feedback for each other, which we give them a model for what feedback is supposed to look like and how it can work. And then that shared feedback creates another side project that comes out of it with a shared grade. So everyone's invested in the success of everyone. And if we set up in learning environments and assessment where everyone's invested in the success of everybody else, then what we find is, you know, building community can happen quite easily in virtual environments.
Thank you very much, Steve, and all your answers were wonderful because there are more questions about the same thing. You know, some of the audience say that the students are disappointed about having to do online, so they need some incentives. So that, and I think your suggestions are great examples of how the students can be incentivized to become engaged with each other, with the community, and so on. So thank you very much. I think there's one question there. Well, one thing I want to say to the audience is that they ask about your presentations. I am telling you, we're gonna, to all of those who register for the webinar, we are sending you a copy of the recording of this session, and also the presentations, and so the contacts of each panelist. Some of them want your contacts because they want to engage with you. So we're going to send that to everybody. And the last question they have is about testing. They say, how do you ensure that the testing is fair, that is secure, that, so I guess that's an important question also, because the assessment is important. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to each of you to say, what do you think about it and what do you do about it? Start with Luz, please.
Yes, my answer is always, it's the same issue even when you're assessing face-to-face. you always have to ensure that you have something in place that ensures fairness, that it's the right person that's doing it. Again, a lot depends on how the assessment online is developed to ensure that, you know, someone else can't do this because they haven't been part of the learning experience. That's one approach. You can use the tools like responders and virtual proctoring, but again, that depends on the environment and the number of students. I do believe though that if it is properly structured, the assessment, the final assessment for a course need not be so based on a sit-down face-to-face examination, because it will be assessments throughout. So the student won't feel as perhaps as required in some cases, so need to cheat perhaps, or to get somebody else to submit their assessment. So I think a lot has to do with how we now look at how we assess students in this new environment. Are we just trying to find out whether they will cheat, or are we really trying to find out if they have learned?
Thank you very much, Luz. Joaquin?
Yes, again, you know, it's about innovation. You know, I hear Steve, you know, and I can reflect, you know, on many of our faculty like Steve, that, you know, they will not stop at anything. I mean, they will find a way to do it, you know, and that's what I'm telling our faculty. Of course, you have, not everyone is like this, but you have this group of faculty that are innovators, that have this drive like Steve is showing, and, you know, and let them experiment and think of alternative ways to assess. Again, you know, if you want to do business as usual, it's not going to work. If you are thinking that you are going to keep putting the same exam, multiple choice, traditional exam, it's not going to work. Because again, you know, and again, these are all type of faculty and personalities, but you have this faculty that can be very obsessive, and he can or she can say, oh no, you need to put several cameras so I can watch on you and see that you're not teaching. You know what? You know, I mean, please don't complicate the process. Can you assess in a different way? Think other ways of doing it. And yes, they are finding these alternative ways, because again, it's not about only measuring, you know, it's about finding a way that students show that they understand, that they are doing what they're doing. It's not about memorizing, you know, it's about knowing what to do with what you know. So again, I think this is an opportunity for challenging faculty and saying, hey, you know, we can assess differently. And this is the opportunity. You have been thrown into the pool of the new assessment way. So hopefully we'll find new ways to do it.
Thank you, Joaquin. Steve, your words will be the closing ones for this discussion.
Well, thank you. I mean, I agree with everything that the rest of the panelists said. I always tell other faculty and anyone that will listen, if you are going to give a test online, just recognize that every online test is an open book test. So if we start from that point and then we build our assessment around that, rather than trying to stop them from going online to find the answers. If instead we say, okay, they have Google right there, they have their textbooks in front of them, let's assess what they can do with the knowledge. It's about the application of the knowledge. So, and if we begin to test that way, testing or an alternative, great ideas for alternative assessment, as already mentioned, if we rethink how we do assessment, we'll be much better off, and our students will be much better off as well.
Thank you very much, Steve. Well, just a final thank you to our three panelists. You were wonderful, great ideas, great suggestions. And this is said by our more like 100 and how many participants? I think 211 participants, or a little bit more probably, that we had. And we are going to send you everything to all the participants, do not worry. It has been a great experience. Thank you so much. We invite everybody to next week, next Wednesday, to the 3rd, which is the last in this series of webinars that are presented to you all from the University Consortium, the Hemispheric University Consortium, that the 14 universities that are members are trying to put together, have tried to put together to learn more and to share best experiences. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.